So you remember when Coach bags were everywhere and not in a good way? Discount bins, outlet malls, and that big C print was everywhere. Fast forward to now, Coach is pulling in record profits, Gen Z is obsessed, and its parent company Tapestry is beating the stock market. So how did they pull this off? Let's break it down. So to understand how we got to where we are now in Q3 of 2025, we first have to start at the beginning and understand the history. They started out in 1941, based in New York City, making baseball gloves, and over the next 20 years or so, they slowly worked their ways up to men's SLGs. Think like card holders, wallets, small bags, things like that. Then enter Bonnie Cashin in 1962. Bonnie Cashin was Coach's first lead designer, and her tenure lasted from 1962 to 1974. Bonnie Cashin brought so many important design cues that are still embedded into the brand's DNA to this day. Think turn locks. She was inspired by the turn locks on her convertible top. She also gave us kiss locks and the ever-perennial classic the Cashin Carry Tote, which I have back here in the limited edition Eagle NYC. Personally, I started out with the brand, buying it I should say, in 2006. Peak Reed Krakoff era. Reed Krakoff really took Coach from that leatherware company where, it was just like the same brown, black, navy blue bags over and over again with brass hardware, and he gave us basically modern Coach. Reed Krakoff introduced so many important design things to the brand as well, and he's almost as synonymous with the brand as Bonnie Cashin. Reed Krakoff gave us the signature C print, which was literally splashed over everything through the mid-2000s. He also gave us important lines like the Bleecker, Legacy, Madison, and Soho collections, which the brand is still reinterpreting to this day. During the Reed Krakoff era, it was all about being accessible price points that were actually right in line with a lot of the lower end Louis Vuitton price points. You could find Legacy bags for just about as much as like a Neverfull or a Speedy back in like the late 2000s. And then the party stopped. Much like Michael Kors, the brand had way oversaturated itself, and the cachet of Coach had disappeared. So how did Coach go from accessible luxury to expressive luxury? The British designer Stuart Bevers took over Coach in 2013 as their creative director. Historically, Stuart Bevers was known for his tenure at Loewe and Mulberry before taking over at Coach. And then he basically refocused the brand on modern, minimal, heritage but cool, less logo, more leather. Think of bags like the Coach Rogue and the Coach Tabby, which have been so hot over the last 5 or 6 years, and fast forward to today where we have bags like the Empire or the Brooklyn, which are still major sellers for the brand. With this new focus, they also repositioned themselves to ditch that outlet first strategy. What do I mean by that? First of all, they cleaned up their distribution, which we're going to cover a little bit more here in just a moment. They reduced overexposure. When Stuart Bevers took over in 2014, they closed over 70 stores that were underperforming. The former Coach store that I worked at in the Glenbrook Mall was one of the 70 stores they closed down. And they also started to control their pricing. Gone were the days where you'd walk into a Coach store and immediately have a 20% coupon thrusted into your hands, which at the time was really kind of bringing the brand down. It was kind of giving it a bad rap, and it was starting to make it feel discount. Cheap, almost, and I hate that word. When all of these key pieces came into play with Vevers' new minimal designs, their refocus on brand heritage, their cleaned up distribution cycle, and their control on pricing, suddenly Coach bags felt expensive again. Now, before we round out this financial success story, let me introduce myself first in case you're new here. Hey guys, my name's Caleb. I post luxury and lifestyle related content several times a week here on YouTube and over my website, curatedbycaleb.com. On there, you're going to find the blog. We just recently had an icons drop. There's still several amazing bags on there, so definitely check out the store. And if you're interested in a little bit more access beyond just hitting that subscribe button down below, consider joining the membership. Hit this QR code over here on your screen for more information on joining that membership, where you're going to have access to a private members-only Discord, members-only meetups, and secret members-only lives. Trust me, guys, we have a ton of fun. But not as much fun as Coach is having in Q3 of 2025. This success story should be the model for all luxury brands. In 2024 alone, there were 6.5 million new customers in North America, and over half of them were Gen Zs and millennials. Now, Tapestry is Coach's parent company. They also own familiar brands like Kate Spade and Stuart Weitzman. Tapestry as a whole saw 1.2 million new shoppers just in Q3 for fiscal year 2025. Now, to drill down a little bit further, over 900,000 of those 1.2 million new shoppers were Coach shoppers, which is absolutely insanity. Now, aside from the Stuart Bevers rebrand for Coach, how did Coach achieve this success, especially with Gen Z? They did this through embracing TikTok, nostalgia, and Coachtopia. So Coachtopia, it's all about circular fashion, recycled bags that are colorful and quirky, which is a direct appeal to younger customers. With this, we're thinking sustainability is cool again, and a lot of this was born from that famous TikTok 3 years ago where someone was calling out their local Coach boutique for just slashing bags and throwing them away. These are either bags that, couldn't have been repaired, were returns that were used, or had other issues, or maybe they just didn't sell and weren't going to outlet. Slashed and thrown in the dumpster. And in 2025, with the world on fire, quite literally, it's hard to turn a blind eye to such waste. So Coach stepped up to the plate. They said, yeah, we screwed up. They gave us Coachtopia. With Coachtopia, a lot of it is going to be like bonded leather, leftover pieces from production with other bags. But they're also doing Reloved, where they're taking these other bags that might have had damage that were returned, or maybe just kind of, boring bags. Dare I say it, a Coach bag boring in 2025. Hard to believe, but stay with me. What they do is they take these bags and they add like patches and studs and tea roses and the famous Stuart Bevers T-Rex icon, and they're dressing these bags up and they're giving people an artful one-of-one design that you're not going to see anyone else have on the street. And what this is doing is leaning into the exclusivity of the brand heritage, while also maintaining an accessible price point. During the Craycoff era, Coach had amazing bag charms. Part of the current success story is the re-release of several bag charms. These aren't the exact same designs as we saw before. Think about like the iconic Cherries charm. We have seen the Cherries charm over and over again, and when the Empire was released, we had an amazing set of, albeit very pricey, bag charms that were just so over the top and leaned into that more is more aesthetic when it comes to decorating our bags with bag charms. And in addition to that, the model to millennial TikTok included nostalgia. We were finding our love again for the brand. I myself had been sleeping on the brand during the early Vevers era. I wasn't into the whole, the swagger bags or some of his earlier releases. With the new current pieces, like with the soft tabby, the Rogue, even the Empire is growing on me. I hate to admit it. We're seeing that all of this good design and nostalgia, sustainability, it hooked new consumers and it's working. And for these younger generations, Gen Zs and millennials, we transact at a higher average unit retail or AUR, which lends itself to supporting better margin outcomes. For other brands, take note. Listen, we don't need hype collabs. We just need strong product and storytelling. At this point, guys, with this turnaround, this successful turnaround, Coach is printing cash. They saw a record 79% gross margin for Q3 2025, which is huge for the Tapestry brand as a whole. Honestly, looking at the other brands' records currently, that's better than a lot of other larger luxury brands, LVMH. Now, how are they doing this exactly? First and foremost, they're controlling inventory. Now, when it comes to a lot of these brands, you go on their websites, you search view all handbags, and it's literally a Dead Sea Scroll. Looking at you, Louis Vuitton. I could not even count with all 20 different categories how many bags that they made in the different canvases, the different leathers. It is overload, not to mention these other brands are coming out with new collections almost monthly. It is overload. When it comes to Coach, they currently only have 286 bags on their website, which seems like a lot. Trust me, it does. But compared to these other houses, just go under view all handbags and start scrolling. You will literally be scrolling for 10 minutes, and trust me, you will not be able to count how many they have because they have so many. They're also doing less discounting. Listen, we talked about this earlier, where at a certain point at the end of the Reed Craycoff era, early Stuart Bevers, you would walk into a Coach boutique and immediately have a haphazardly cut out 20% off or 25% off coupon handed to you before you even picked up a bag. And in a way that was just kind of cheapening the brand. It was making you think, oh, Coach, it was equating with discount, and it just wasn't mathing. The math was not mathing, both at the investors level and at the consumer level. It was just too much, too often. After they did away with this discounting, and with new minimal discounting, we actually saw an increase of 18 AURs over the last 20 quarters. That is amazing growth for a company that had initially lost a lot of its cachet with its consumers. Tapestry is also incredibly smart with its sourcing. A lot of their product, at least 70%, comes from Southeast Asia. We're looking at countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, the Philippines. Many of these vendors they've been using for the last 20 or 30 years. Now, with the impending tariff rumors, Coach was incredibly smart. They have pulled inventory early to avoid these tariffs. And that on their part wasn't just a smart business move, it's giving luxury chess moves. Now, at this point, it should come as no surprise that Coach is seriously carrying the Tapestry group, whereas brands like Kate Spade and Stuart Weitzman are lagging. Coach revenue growth was up 15% in Q3 to $1.3 billion, which was enough to offset Kate Spade's loss at negative 12% and Stuart Weitzman at negative 17%. Even with Tapestry having those failures over at Kate Spade and Stuart Weitzman, Coach alone is enough to increase the Tapestry stock 25% in 2025. That's insane numbers. And as a company, Tapestry is no fool. They're looking at these numbers, they're looking at the data, and they're leaning into it. And because of this, they actually dropped Stuart Weitzman for $105 million, which is a far cry from the $574 million that Tapestry spent on Stuart Weitzman just in 2015. That is a pretty big loss. And because of this, they've repositioned their focus on Coach as their main moneymaker. This is the flagship brand for the Tapestry that's really carrying things along and setting the pace for the company as a whole. And not to forget, about a year ago, there was a very real possibility of a Tapestry and Capri Holdings merger. Now, for those of you not familiar with Capri Holdings, this is the parent company that owns such failing nameplates like Michael Kors and Versace. Because it was canceled, the investors at Tapestry loved it. There was no need for a messy merger with failing Michael Kors and a Versace who hasn't been treated properly as a brand over the last 5 to 10 years. At the end of the day, Tapestry just did not need this extra dead weight. So what can brands learn from Tapestry? Brands need to modernize without losing touch with their heritage. Accept the brand that you were originally. Look towards the past for your inspiration, especially with all the nostalgia, cyclical fashion. Everybody's looking back to Y2K, the McBling era, and also like the brand's heritage at its core. When Coach first got started in 1941, they focused on small batch leather pieces based out of New York, which unfortunately with today's production models, they truly can't be based out of New York City any longer. They need a more globalized effect, but they don't have to lose their identity in doing so. Also, know your audience. Gen Z wants sustainability and emotion. Romance the brand. Splashing your handbags onto models like Zendaya doesn't necessarily sell like it did 10, 15 years ago for millennials. Gen Z, they're looking for more of an emotional touchstone with a brand, and they're also open to not needing to save up, a quarter of their yearly salary just to buy one handbag. You can get the cool, flashy, well-made handbag for $100 to $400 on average. That's a win for everyone involved. Don't overexpose. Scarcity still works, and in this instance, Coach has really nailed this. Similar brands like Michael Kors and Dooney and Burke, they are so overexposed. You can walk into any department store, any outlet, really any mid-level mall. You're gonna find these brands everywhere in these stores. Also, too high of inventory. A lot of these brands, looking at you again, LV, have so many different bags when they just need to drill down and focus on 5 to 10 really good designs that are going to appeal to mass customers. Listen, anyone can wear a Coach Tabby. Anyone can carry a Rogue. Anyone can carry an Empire. And it works. It works for Coach. It works on a sustainability standpoint. They're not making all of these extra bags that they're going to have to discount then again at the outlet and later on cheapen the brand. It just makes good business sense. Again, it's giving luxury chess moves. The most important thing, make the numbers work. No brand is cool if it's broke. So looking back at the blueprint and Coach's history, why did all of this work? All of a sudden, out of the blue, why did Coach become so popular with Gen Z and become one of the leading forefront as far as brand profitability when it comes to luxury brands? First of all, brand reinvention. Stuart Bevers engaged younger customers with distinct value-driven positioning. Another factor, premium pricing with control. Coach successfully boosted their margins while still maintaining brand accessibility. Supply chain agility, especially in uncertain times like 2025, Coach positioned themselves in such a way that mitigated global trade risks and controlled costs. And then they focused on their portfolio. They concentrated their resources on their most profitable brand and cut losses with brands like Stuart Weitzman. And I wouldn't be surprised if Kate Spade is also on the same way out, unless they can turn Kate Spade around into the fun, quirky brand that we all loved in the 90s. And at the end of all of this, Coach is giving us a front seat to this masterclass on how to rebuild a brand and do it profitably. This isn't just a glow up, it's a total business flex. And I think that a lot of other companies would be smart to kind of follow this business model, this restructuring, the rebranding, the getting back to heritage, the core of their brands. Like I would love to see brands like Dooney and Burke and LV and even Michael Kors follow this method and really turn their brands around into the powerhouses that they once were. Now, let me know down in the comments, have you been here with Coach all the way through, or are you a newer buyer in 2025? With almost 1 million new buyers just at Coach alone in 2025 so far, I'd be interested to hear how many of them are watching this video. Let me know down in the comments, guys, and until next time, stay safe, have fun. If you haven't already, start shopping at Coach. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye. Bye.